What's a dark secret you want to get off of your chest? Story 1. When I was 7, I was home alone. I called 911 because of a house fire that consumed half the house, and they found me outside. My mother, who was at work at the time, I was a latchkey kid, was told by the fire department that the fire had been caused by an electrical issue. In reality, I had a lighter and was fascinated by fire. I started burning the little tassels at the end of the blanket on my bed, putting them out before they could ignite the entire blanket, until I couldn't. The whole bed caught fire. The heat from the fire caused an electrical outlet to short circuit, leading the firefighters to believe that the fire had started there. I'm 40 now. My mother still doesn't know the truth, but I remember it all vividly, including the heat on my face as I desperately tried to put out the flames. Story 2. I've had the same best friend since I was 16. We met in high school. When we turned 19, she met her husband. Over time, I became closer to him than to my best friend. We developed a deep sibling-like bond. My best friend has cognitive disabilities and struggles with anxiety, so it was often easier for me to vent to him. This past October, he passed away from AML leukemia. I stepped in to support my best friend through the transition. I planned a memorial service, paid for the cremation. I was reimbursed after the life insurance processed, and became her emotional rock. But internally, I'm completely devastated. I don't trust people easily, and he was one of the very few people I felt safe confiding in. The loss is unbearable, and I have no one to turn to with my grief, because the person I'd talked to about this is gone. I can't bring myself to share these feelings with my best friend. She's already in so much pain, and I want to be strong for her. Balancing my own grief while supporting her is incredibly difficult. Story 3. I have a friend who constantly talks about how many Twitch followers he has and how he's becoming a big streamer. What he doesn't know is that most of his followers and viewers are actually me. He was so depressed that no one was tuning in that I used a Google Workspace account and a bunch of aliases to create fake Twitch accounts to follow and watch his streams. Now it's gotten out of hand. He started boasting to our friend group about his growing audience. I don't know how to handle the situation. I worry that if I slowly stop, he'll become depressed again. But this lie has spiraled out of control. For those asking, I'm not sharing his stream link. It wouldn't help him to see a sudden influx of viewers. And I don't want him Googling himself and stumbling upon this post. Instead, one of the comments below linked to a kid's stream. If you want to make a child smile, consider giving them a follow instead, though it seems the moderators removed the post. Story 4. One of my oldest and best friends got married before I did. He chose his 2 brothers and a mutual friend as his groomsmen. The mutual friend had joined our group in high school, whereas the groom and I had been friends since first grade. It stung a little, but I went to the wedding and had a great time. A few years later, when it came time for my wedding, I thought a lot about the situation. This friend was the obvious choice to be one of my groomsmen. That's when I realized something important. Not all friendships are perfectly equal, but that doesn't make them any less real or meaningful. I love this guy like a brother. Loving someone means accepting them for who they are and respecting their decisions, even when they hurt a little. I asked him to be a groomsman, and he said yes. Over the years, I've made a point to show him how much his friendship means to me, because it truly does. In fact, he's even said things like, "I should have had you as a groomsman." For me, this friendship is about what I value. I share myself with this person because I like who they are. That's a choice I've made, and I'm okay with it. Sure, people can hurt or disappoint you, but him not choosing me as a groomsman wasn't enough to damage our bond. Even without that, he continues to show signs that he values me as a friend. Weddings are complicated. There's so much societal and family pressure. When it was my turn, I was lucky to have a fiancée, now wife, who helped me make decisions that truly reflected what I wanted, which was hard for me as a people pleaser. So here's my advice. If you value someone's friendship, show it. Tell them through your words and actions. Show up for them. Invite them to things. If they don't reciprocate, maybe it's time to move on. But don't let something like a wedding define the entire relationship. Story 5. Back in college, my floor mates decided I needed to loosen up. They knew I'd had a bad first sexual experience and claimed they wanted to help. One night at a pregame, they handed me drink after drink. I was just happy they were being nice to me. But one of those drinks was drugged. I don't remember leaving the dorm that night, though I was told later that we went to a bar. I don't remember the bar or how I got back to my room. What I do remember is waking up the next morning, naked, with a condom still on me, and a girl I didn't know sitting in my desk chair. I was frozen, in complete shock. When I asked her what happened, she said, "I only stayed because I thought you might be dead. I can't believe they convinced me to do this. I'd never seen her before, but after that day I saw her around campus sometimes. We avoided each other. When I confronted my floor mates, they got defensive and dismissed my concerns. They acted like I should be grateful for getting with a really attractive girl. They never apologized. Now, 9 years later, people still wonder why I'm single. They say things like, "You have such a big heart, you'd make someone happy." I've told only one person about what happened, and their response was, "At least it wasn't real rape." That reaction crushed me. Now I don't tell anyone. I'm terrified I won't be taken seriously. I've never had a healthy relationship or a positive sexual experience. I don't know if I'll ever get to a place where I can achieve that. At this stage, what's the point? Even if I met someone tomorrow, I'd be in my 30s getting married, if marriage is even possible for me, and who knows if I'd have kids. I've started to accept that I might be alone for the rest of my life, even if that's not what I want. Story 6. I'm in a really bad place right now. My partner is sick. He suffered brain damage after a sudden illness. Most days he's his old self, but on others he's like a stranger. He gets angry and confused. He doesn't recognize me, doesn't know who I am. He gets into rages, and I have to calm him down. I have to remind him of the 13 years we've spent together. And I have to break his heart over and over again, telling him that his dad is dead. To people on the outside, he seems fine, just a bit quieter than usual. They don't see him when he's lost, when he's looking at me like I'm a stranger. It's exhausting. I'm burning out. Between work, studying, caring for him, volunteering, and now having to move house because life wasn't already hard enough, I'm overwhelmed. Since he has mobility issues, most of the move will fall on me. He'll struggle with the change, get upset, and be confused. But I won't leave him. I love him so much. I adore him. Yet I've had to come to terms with the fact that the life we planned together is gone. We were planning to have a baby. We even picked out names. He still talks about it with such excitement and says the most beautiful things about us becoming parents. But I've had to accept that it probably won't happen. His mobility and memory issues make it too risky. He can't work, so how could I leave him alone with a baby? What if I came home to find the oven smoking because he forgot he turned it on? I desperately want his child. I want our baby. But I've had to stop letting myself feel excited about it because I can't bring myself to tell him the truth. His illness is the reason it may never happen. Every time we talk about it, my heart breaks all over again. I'm devastated. We're not bad people. We keep to ourselves. We help others when we can. But lately, life has just been relentless. This feels like the final nail in the coffin, and I don't think I can take much more. I've never felt so much hatred toward whatever cosmic force or God might exist. Every morning, I wake up from the little sleep I get, begging for it all to stop. I just want my old life back. I want my old partner back. I want the future we planned. And I'm angry, so angry. People keep telling me to be grateful that he isn't worse off, and I am grateful. I was told that if he lived, he'd be in a wheelchair, and he defied the odds. But just because he's doing better than expected doesn't mean I'm not allowed to feel pain. This didn't just happen to him, it happened to us. He doesn't remember that night, but I do. I remember every moment. I remember him seizing in bed. I remember calling 112. I remember him seizing over and over again. I remember performing CPR. I remember him calling my name, terrified, before he seized again and slipped into unconsciousness for 26 hours. He doesn't have epilepsy. He's never had any major health issues before. It was so random, so out of the blue, and it completely destroyed our lives. I know other people have it worse, and I hate how I sound, but I'm done. I can't take any more. Whatever is out there, whatever we've done to deserve this, just leave him alone. He's a good, kind, sweet man, and he doesn't deserve any of this. Just stop, please, because I don't think I can take much more. Story 7. A few people know that someone I was very close to died by suicide in 2014. He was the kindest man, always asking about me, and would travel 2 hours by train just to meet me for a cup of tea and a slice of cake. He was always there for me, so much so that I never considered the possibility of him one day not being there. He seemed so happy. Everything was the best, every joke was the funniest, and every brownie was the gooeyest. What I don't tell anyone is that, in the days leading up to his death, I had several missed calls from him. I even watched one of the calls ring without answering. He sent me a message pleading with me to call him when I had the chance. I had many chances, but I didn't call him. Later that week, I woke up to a message from him. It was so long that when pasted into a Word document, it took me 2 days to read. He wrote about his life, how insignificant he felt, how wonderful he thought I was, and he ended with an apology. Shortly after, I received an email from his mother. She told me he had jumped in front of a moving train. I've never been a very sociable person. I've always cared deeply and tried to do the right thing. But since that day, I've stopped keeping kind thoughts to myself. Now I check in on people, bake cakes, and always answer my phone. It's my way of keeping a part of him alive. I've learned that the absence of kindness can sometimes be just as damaging as malice. I wish I'd realized that sooner. If you meet someone who seems enthusiastic and lives every day like it's their last, it might actually be. That's why I promise to always pick up the phone. It's too late for me to change what happened, and I'll carry the guilt for the rest of my life. But I'm okay with that if it means he isn't forgotten. My dad once told me that in the afterlife, everyone will be resurrected perfect. That gives me comfort, knowing I'll recognize him someday. He was a great friend, perfect in every way. I just hope I'll get the chance to ask for his forgiveness. Story 8. I grew up in a charismatic evangelical cult. When I was 16 or 17, I was physically, not sexually, assaulted by the pastor and several church members during an exorcism to cure my depression and suicidal thoughts. It didn't work, obviously. Shortly after, I attempted suicide, but I failed. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here to share this. After my attempt, I spent weeks crying on the phone to suicide helplines and trans helplines at night. I begged them not to call authorities because it would have only made things worse. One night, my sister found me in the bathroom because I'd cried so hard that I vomited. She was only 14 or 15 at the time. I remember her asking if I was okay, and it was clear that I wasn't. She comforted me in ways I can't even remember now. What I do remember is her kindness, her concern, and the way she supported me, even knowing how much I hated myself. She has always been my biggest support. 6 years later, we both escaped our parents. They're terrible people who still attend the same church where I was assaulted and believe the cult did nothing wrong. I've been no contact with them for almost a year, but my sister still talks to them occasionally. She keeps firm boundaries, and I'm so proud of her for that. I recently celebrated my 22nd birthday, my first without my parents. My sister made me a cake, got me a present, and we had a small gathering. I didn't tell her, but I was sad the whole day. None of my family wished me a happy birthday, which is what I wanted, but it still hurt. Deep down, I still miss my parents. I'm still that scared kid who wants his mom and dad. I want my dad to tell me he's proud of me instead of calling me a failure or worse. I want my mom to tell me I'm perfect as I am and that she'll love me no matter what. I turned to heavy drug use as a way to cope with my trauma and my fear of therapy. I've been clean and sober for 5 months, but some days the memories overwhelm me and the cravings come back. I'm just grateful I don't know any dealers now. Otherwise, I'd likely have overdosed again. I'm doing my best to heal, but it's hard. I'm just thankful for my sister, who has always been my rock. Story 9. As a kid, I developed an interest in learning how to pick locks. One day, when I was about 10 or 11, I managed to open my father's safe in the bedroom. Inside, I found a disassembled firearm, a 9mm, I think, and a box of bullets. I thought it would be a fun challenge to try and assemble the gun. Once I got it together, a friend stopped by, and we decided to take it into the woods to shoot at birds or whatever we could find. At one point, the gun didn't fire, and we thought it must have run out of ammo. My friend was holding the gun, pointing the barrel at himself and at me at times as we tried to figure it out. He handed it back to me saying, "It must be empty." As we exchanged it, the gun discharged into the ground. One of us could have been killed or seriously hurt, miles away from any help. That moment terrified me, and I've been afraid of guns ever since. I did get caught for using the gun because I scratched it while trying to assemble it. I took the punishment without complaint and considered myself lucky to still be alive. My father, who was a good man, did the right thing. He got rid of the gun once he realized I could gain access to it. Years later, that decision saved my life. As a teenager during a very dark time, I went to the safe intending to use the gun on myself, but it wasn't there. That simple choice of his gave me the chance to keep going. For the past 30 years, I've been grateful for that. Story 10. I was an unplanned pregnancy to two 20-year-olds who didn't love each other but got married because I was on the way. We never stayed in one place for more than a year. My parents weren't financially stable, and my father worked night shifts, so we constantly moved between apartments or to my grandparents' house. I never tried to make friends or socialize because I knew I wouldn't see them again once we moved. When I was 5, my maternal grandfather died of cancer. A year later, my mother passed away from a painkiller overdose. No one knows if it was accidental or intentional, but my grandmother insists it wasn't on purpose. However, my parents had been fighting so severely that my dad was staying with his parents at the time. I believe she had enough and ended her life on purpose. Growing up without a mother, I never developed social skills, and I lack empathy. Doctors suspect I have reactive attachment disorder, RAD, which makes forming connections with people almost impossible. At this point, I feel emotionally numb, like an empty shell of a person. When my step-grandfather passed away, I felt nothing, even after knowing him for 10 years. He used to give me $2 bills for my birthday, even though he wasn't well off, and that gesture meant a lot to me. But now that he's gone, I feel nothing, and it's a stark reminder of how deeply broken I am. I'm a social outcast with no friends, and what little family I have left barely speaks to me because of how bitter and nihilistic I've become. I wish life had dealt me a different hand, but at the end of the day, I know my misery is now my own responsibility. Story 11. Deep down, I know I'll never be good enough. One of my darkest memories is from when I was a traumatized child. I was hiding in a pull-out sofa, shaking with fear as my young friend was being brutally beaten by her parent. She had told me to hide and stay quiet because I wasn't supposed to be there. She said if they found out, they'd kill her. When her dad finally left the room, I came out. She wasn't breathing well and she was covered in blood. I was terrified but knew I needed help. I ran to a nearby neighbor's house, bloodied and crying. I must have looked horrifying, stumbling over my words, trying to say, "My friend needs help. I think she's dying." The neighbors called the police and made me wait there. When they brought her out of the house, she was in a black bag. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but the officer gently told me, "Honey, I don't know how to tell you this." I already knew. My heart sank. Even as a child, I felt an emptiness that has stayed with me. The image of her haunts me to this day. I often think of her, and every time I'm brought back to that moment of helplessness, grief, and trauma. Story 12. M was repeatedly raped by my ex-girlfriend and fiancé over the course of 2 years. Few people believe me because I'm a man. She used various methods to coerce me into sex. Sometimes she would get me drunk. Other times, she would threaten me, kick me out of bed, or force me to sleep on the floor unless I agreed. She threatened to tell her parents that I was hitting her if I said no. She'd throw bottles or pillows at me, or even at my PC. If none of that worked, she'd cry profusely or scream until I gave in. She also told our friends that I had schizophrenia. I don't, claiming I didn't remember things correctly. She ridiculed me, my weight, even though I'm not overweight, and my sexual performance in public, in front of our friends. Nobody helped me. She nearly killed me 9 different times. Now, I struggle with crippling relationship anxiety and terrible memory issues. I can't remember dates, names, or even important details about my current partner. I keep a memory journal to track her favorite movies, games, and shows, but even with that, things still slip through the cracks. This trauma manifests in ways that make me feel like a failure, and it hurts knowing how it affects my current relationship. I want to trust people, but I find it incredibly hard. When I try to talk about my past, people don't believe me, but I know what happened. I was raped. And the scars of that experience continue to shape my life in ways I'm still learning to navigate. Story 13. For the past decade, I sold drugs, cocaine and weed. It was a fast lifestyle with fast money, but recently, everything came crashing down when I got caught. The police who arrested me only found the weed. They searched my house but missed the 2 guns I'd hidden and the 40 packs of cocaine in my car. They found 19 bags of weed and a knife. I pleaded guilty, claiming the knife was for fishing, and that charge was eventually dropped. I received 2 years suspended for the weed and a 530 pounds fine. I was unbelievably lucky they missed so much. Since then, I've left that life behind and become a functioning member of society. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day and work in construction to earn an honest living. But karma didn't miss me. Now my 4 kids know how I provided for them, and I can see the disappointment in their eyes. My family knows too. My mother and father-in-law have banned me from family functions in their house, calling me scum. My income has dropped by 3/4 and debt collectors are at my door weekly. I feel ashamed and full of regret. Nothing I ever earned or bought was worth it. I wish I'd never chased the easy money because it's cost me more than I ever imagined. Story 14. My cousin, who I was extremely close to for most of my life, didn't include me in his wedding party or even send me my own invitation. I was lumped in with my parents' invite, despite living in a different city for college at the time. This happened 7 years ago, and it changed everything. I've only seen him at family functions since then. I don't have his number saved anymore, and the only time we interact is if he occasionally comments on one of my Facebook posts, though even that is rare now. At the time, I felt deeply hurt. I kept holding out hope that I'd be in the wedding party, thinking he was just procrastinating. But 2 weeks before the wedding, I realized it wasn't going to happen. The worst part? Of the 3 people he did include, I know for a fact he didn't share the same bond with them that he had with me. From age 12 to 20, we were inseparable, spending almost every weekend together and even taking turns driving to school. I never saw him spend that kind of time with those other 2. I went to the wedding only to avoid causing drama for my parents. Though they supported me not going, I didn't enjoy myself at all. I wish I could say I've moved on, but I haven't. I feel nothing but resentment toward him. Now I treat him like a distant relative. I've never met his kids and I don't care to. I act as though he's just another family member I see at functions, and nothing more. I don't wish ill on him or his marriage, but I've already decided he won't be invited to my wedding, and I feel nothing about that decision. He was my best friend for most of my life, but now he's just someone I used to know. Story 15. In college, a close friend of mine was raped at a party. It was someone she knew, and during the assault, he broke 2 of her ribs. She was drunk, and he forced himself on her. A few weeks later, our regular group of friends were roughhousing with couch cushions, something we'd done since middle school. At one point, I rolled off the couch with a big pillow and accidentally landed on her broken ribs. She screamed in pain and had to go to the hospital, where they confirmed her ribs were broken. She never told anyone except a close mutual female friend that her ribs had actually been broken during the assault. Not from me. Because of that, our entire friend group, along with many high school friends, believed I was the one who broke her ribs. I became the target of endless jokes and was labeled a woman beater. About a year later, the mutual female friend told me the truth about what had happened. I asked her to keep it between us and not share the real story. I didn't want to out my friend's trauma. It wasn't my story to tell. I also didn't want her to feel forced to relive it or have to explain it to anyone. For that entire year, I carried the guilt, even crying about it, thinking I'd hurt a close friend who was like a sister to me. But I knew her pain from the assault was far worse than the misunderstandings I had to endure. I've kept that secret ever since and will take it to my grave. I lost a number of friends and had some uncomfortable interactions because of the misunderstanding, but that was 10 years ago. We've all moved on with our lives, though the memory still lingers. Story 16. Back in 1987 or 1988, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I stole a Transformer toy from a small mom-and-pop store. It was the 80s in France, and back then, it wasn't unusual for parents to leave their kids unattended while they ran errands. My mom would drop me off at this store regularly. I had been eyeing a Transformer toy for weeks. It was a gray plane, but not Starscream. I already had Bumblebee, but I wanted more. My parents only bought me toys for birthdays, Christmas, or as rewards for good grades, so I knew begging wouldn't work. One day, the store was almost empty. The owner was behind the register, and no one was around me. I decided to steal it. My heart was racing as I carefully opened the box with my tiny fingers. I managed to get the toy out without making too much noise and stuffed it into my puffy winter jacket. I put the empty box back on the shelf, hiding it behind other toys. Then came the hard part. I couldn't just leave because my mom wasn't back yet. I wandered the store, pretending to look at Barbie dolls to avoid suspicion. Every second felt like an eternity. I was sweating, terrified someone would notice the bulge in my jacket or find the empty box. Finally, after what felt like forever, my mom came back. I acted cool, said I didn't see anything I liked, and we left. Once we got home, I waited for the right moment to sneak the toy out of my coat and into my room. I played with it in secret for days, hiding it at the bottom of my toy crate when I wasn't using it. Eventually, my dad saw me playing with it and asked where it came from. I lied, saying I traded it with a friend from school. He believed me and didn't ask further. For months, I felt guilty, like I'd committed a major crime. I avoided the store for a year, telling my mom I wanted to stay with her during errands, which she appreciated. Over time, I forgot about it as I grew up. Looking back now, it feels like a silly childhood secret, but at the time, it was the most daring thing I'd ever done. Story 17. I don't know if I truly want to spend the rest of my life with my partner, and that uncertainty scares me. We've been together for almost a decade, and he's been an incredibly stable presence in my life. He helped me through college and has always been there when I needed support. We've weathered rough patches before, especially when we moved in together at a young age to a city we didn't know. During that time, I was extremely depressed and our sex life suffered. Years have passed since then, but now we've both let ourselves go. My taste in men has changed, and honestly, his habits irritate me. He spends hours at his computer, and I doubt he's attracted to me anymore. I wouldn't blame him if he wasn't. We don't do anything together anymore. I can't remember the last time we went on a date, to the movies, or out for dinner. I haven't had an orgasm during sex in months. He doesn't kiss me during sex anymore. He has no life goals, none at all. Our love languages are completely incompatible. I need physical and verbal affection, someone to hold me, tell me they love me, and show kindness. I don't get that from him anymore. I wish he loved me more. I wish he wanted me more. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a bystander in his life. On one hand, it's hard to imagine my life without him. But on the other hand, I don't know if I can commit to feeling this way forever. There are times when I love him completely and never want to leave. Then there are times when I think I love the idea of who I want him to be, not who he actually is. It's confusing and heartbreaking. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I can't deny how deeply conflicted I feel. Story 18. I grew up in a cult. My grandmother has been running it for 45 years, and even in her advanced age, she's still active. She kidnaps children by alienating them from their parents, making them completely dependent on her. Her method is disturbingly calculated. She befriends young women in vulnerable situations, offering them and their children a place to stay. The women give her 90% of their income under the guise of paying bills. Eventually, they get fed up and leave, taking their kids with them. That's when my grandmother starts calling them, guilt-tripping them about how their lifestyle will harm their children. Many of them end up leaving their kids with her and returning to their old habits, drugs, alcohol, or other destructive behaviors. CPS is constantly involved at her house, and the mothers often lose custody of their children to her. When I was 3, my parents had recently moved out of her house in Texas and relocated to Ohio. We were staying in a motel while my father worked as a maintenance man there to cover the costs. One day, he stepped outside to use a payphone to order pizza, leaving me with a friend for a few minutes. That friend wanted my father's job, so he called the police and accused my dad of child abandonment. My dad was within sight of the motel room door the whole time, but it didn't matter. The police took me from my loving parents, and since my grandmother was my closest blood relative, I was placed with her. For the next 12 years, I was raised to believe lies, that my parents didn't love me, that my father had raped me, and that I was so mentally ill that I required dangerously high doses of medication for my age. At 10 years old, I was taught to cook and clean. By 11, I was responsible for looking after 2 younger kids. When I was 15, I found an old letter that had fallen behind a filing cabinet. It was from a woman begging my grandmother to let her see her child, even just once. She hadn't seen them in over a year. As I read the letter, I saw my own name. My grandmother had never taken in another child with my name. It was the first clue I had about my real identity. I realized my mother not loving me was a lie, and I began to question everything I'd been told. I messaged my mom on Facebook, and 5 years later, I'm now living with her and my father. Even as an adult, I'm still processing everything. My entire life until 5 years ago was a lie, and it's hard to wrap my head around it. The beatings I endured left my bones prone to dislocation. The emotional abuse left me riddled with self-doubt. But I survived. I went through hell, true, complete hell, and came out on the other side. For the first time, I'm happy, even if I don't always feel like an adult. Thanks for listening, strangers. Story 19. I hate my wife for tricking me into having 2 kids. I love my children because they're mine, but I also resent their existence because I never wanted them. I made it clear to my wife before we even started dating that I didn't want kids. She accepted that, and we moved forward in our relationship. Years later, she got off birth control without telling me. I would have been fine using condoms or other forms of male contraception, but she made the decision without involving me. Now we're stuck in a small rundown town in a crappy house because of the financial strain. Even when opportunities arise for us to move, my wife refuses because of her low-paying job. I'll never tell my kids how much trouble their existence has caused me, nor will I treat them poorly because of it. It's not their fault they're here. But the truth is, their presence has derailed my life in ways I'll never recover from. For now, I'm staying in this marriage so my children won't grow up in a broken home. But once they're out on their own, I'm leaving. I've had divorce papers ready since my youngest was born. It's not just the kids. My wife has done other things that have made me fall out of love with her entirely. I've grown bitter and hateful toward her, but that's a story for another time. Story 20. My first sexual experience was an assault. At 19 years old, I became a victim of human trafficking for 3 months. After I escaped, I focused on being invisible so he couldn't find me. I was too scared to report the incident to the police initially, but as time passed, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility to ensure this monster couldn't hurt anyone else. After some failed attempts, I finally reported him to the police. However, the officers showed little sympathy. It felt like they were blaming me for what happened, whether because they were desensitized to cases like mine or simply didn't care. For me, it was a terrifying and humiliating experience. After making the report, I had a severe panic attack on my way home. I called the police to ask them to drop the case because I feared for my life. They assured me they would, but they didn't. A year later, he was arrested after new reports came in. However, he was released due to insufficient evidence. According to the case file, he had assaulted over 20 women, was in the country illegally, and had charges related to drugs and blackmailing. Despite this, they claimed there wasn't enough evidence to keep him behind bars. That was another devastating blow. I had a mental breakdown, but I needed to survive. To keep my mind occupied, I enrolled in law school. It wasn't easy. I was struggling with trauma and undergoing therapy to help me cope, but I was determined to fight back. Even as I studied, I couldn't rest knowing this man was still free. I took matters into my own hands. Over the next 2 years, I made anonymous police reports detailing everything I knew: his crimes, his immigration status, his money laundering operations, and his residence address. Whenever the police closed a report, I opened a new one. Again and again. Finally, after years of persistence, the police conducted a raid and caught him trafficking people again. This time, he had escalated to facilitating the sexual exploitation of a child. It broke my heart. I couldn't stop thinking about how all of this could have been avoided if the police had believed me and the other victims from the start. Now, his case has been in Crown Court for over a year, and I'm desperately hoping he will finally be sentenced for his crimes. He has evaded justice for over a decade, and I can't rest until I see him behind bars. I'm obsessed with bringing justice to myself and the other victims. If he's not found guilty again, I'll question everything, including my choice to become a lawyer. Nobody in my personal life knows about this, not my friends or family. Only the police and my therapists are aware. I've been through hell during and after the assault. My mental health has been deeply damaged, and recovery feels like an uphill battle every day. This is my secret. Thank you for taking the time to read it. Maybe, if I'm still around when the case concludes, I'll update this post with the result. Story 21. I've come to realize that I'm a horrible person, possibly the sole reason for nearly every conflict that arises in my friend group. After my ex-boyfriend broke up with me a few months ago, saying he didn't feel anything for me anymore, I spiraled into loneliness and self-hatred. Before our relationship, we had been best friends and our lives had changed dramatically while we were together. I even moved to another city. Despite the breakup being calm and agreeing to stay friends, I couldn't handle seeing him in our shared friend group. I started drinking excessively and isolating myself. I began seeing problems and enemies where none existed, which led to an endless cycle of conflicts, most of which I caused, with my friends. The worst part is, I feel jealous when they're happy and enjoying life. Instead of being a good friend who supports and feels glad for their progress, especially for my ex who had struggled with depression, I feel annoyed. It hurts to see them happy while I'm still stuck in my struggles. I hate the thought that they're happier without me. I know my shitty life is my own responsibility. I'm trying to stop drinking altogether because it only made things worse. But I can't shake the feeling that they'd be better off without me. The only reason I haven't distanced myself is that I'm terrified of being alone. They're 3 hours away, and I don't have anyone else where I live now. My thoughts are so jumbled, and I'm struggling to sort through them. I just feel like I'm drowning in problems and don't know how to fix anything. Story 22. This might not seem too dark, but I'm lying awake thinking about it, so here it goes. Everyone, my friends, roommates, and family, thinks I'm just scared of bugs, but the truth is I'm downright horrified by them. It's probably an actual phobia. A few weeks ago, there was a mosquito trapped in my room for several days. It kept biting me in my sleep. Even though I know better, I haven't been able to stop obsessing over the idea that I have bed bugs. I don't. But I've been vacuuming my mattress, constantly washing my sheets, and doing exhaustive inspections. The worst part is that when I'm tired, I can feel bugs crawling on me, even though I know they're not real. It's been torture, and it started to affect my ability to function in daily life. I'm finally convincing myself that I don't have bed bugs because the evidence supports that, but I'm ashamed to talk about this with anyone. I'm scared they'd think I'm crazy or paranoid, even though I know I'm not. I sometimes have anxiety, and bugs seem to trigger it in the worst way. That's my biggest secret, I guess. Story 23. One time when I was a little too drunk, I accidentally let some strangers into my house. My brother and I noticed they were also very drunk. After a few hours, most of them sobered up and left, except for one guy who was still extremely drunk. We asked him to leave, not wanting the situation to escalate, but instead of leaving, he shouted, F asterisk 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 off, and pulled a revolver out of his pocket. He shot me in the arm and my brother in the stomach. My brother fell to the ground, but I somehow managed to stay standing. Panicking, I tried to grab the gun from his hand. We struggled, and the gun went off multiple times during the fight. I was terrified that one of us would get shot again, so I kept fighting. Eventually, I managed to wrestle the gun away, but in the struggle, I accidentally shot him in the head. I started sobbing, desperately trying to help my brother despite the blood pouring from my arm. I somehow managed to get him to the hospital where he survived. I did too, though the trauma of that night has never left me. Since then, I haven't touched alcohol, not a single drop. Story 24. I carry a deep and lingering guilt over my sister's death. The day she died, she begged us to call an ambulance. I can still hear her pleading, but our mother decided to drive her to the hospital instead. I sat frozen in fear as she begged me to make the call. I even told my mom, please just call them, but she insisted on taking her herself. None of us expected her to pass away, but she did. I've always tried to comfort myself with the belief that she got to the hospital quicker with our mom driving her. It was a straight trip without waiting for the ambulance to arrive and transport her. Still, the guilt eats at me. I wonder if calling an ambulance might have made a difference, if paramedics could have revived her when she collapsed. She died at the hospital, right at the reception desk. She had just signed in and was getting her bracelet when she collapsed. They tried to save her, but it was too late. This is something I've never told my therapist. I'm terrified of being judged for it. I was 19, scared, and didn't know what to do. If I could go back, knowing what I know now, I would have called. Even if it changed nothing, it would give me peace of mind. I also carry guilt for not hugging her before she walked out the door that day. She knew she was dying, but we didn't believe her because she struggled with anxiety and other mental health issues. I hate myself for not getting up to hug her, for staying frozen in my fear instead. I would give anything to have her back. I think about her every single day. I'm so sorry. I love you and miss you more than words can say. Story 25. My fiance and I aren't in a real relationship anymore. For the last year, we've been somewhere between roommates and friends with benefits. Despite this, we've been together for over 6 years, lived together, and continue to lie to our families about still being engaged. We both know that as soon as we're financially stable enough, we'll go our separate ways. Every time we visit my family, they ask if we've set a wedding date or looked at venues. We dodge the questions, not wanting to upset anyone until we're ready to move forward with our plans to split. But the harder truth is that, despite the situation, I'm still in love with her. If she changed her mind tomorrow and said she wanted to get married, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I know she won't. She's been honest. She says the spark isn't there anymore. While she still loves me as a friend and cares about me, she doesn't want a romantic relationship. It's been incredibly hard to accept this, especially since we still live together and likely will for a few more months. I'm trying to respect her wishes and keep things as neutral as possible. But every day, all I want to do is tell her how much I love her and how much I want to spend my life with her. Knowing that she doesn't feel the same kills me a little inside every day. Story 26. Growing up, I feel like I was over-sexualized as a child. Being born handsome and mannish, I was constantly complimented by women. They'd say things like, "You're so handsome," "You're so mature for your age," or "You're so mannish." At first, it seemed innocent, meant to build my confidence as a boy. But as I got older, those compliments shifted to ones with underlying sexual tones. This led to me having sexual experiences with women who were far older and more advanced, physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially than I was. Girls my age didn't want to get to know me. They were more interested in seeing if they could have me for a moment. Older women, on the other hand, seemed to understand my feelings better, or so I thought. They preyed on my need for connection. At the time, it made me feel important, strong, like a big man. But as I reflect now, I realize it warped my understanding of sexual connection. For most people, sex fosters intimacy, love, and connection. For me, it became a way to fulfill an urge. I wouldn't call these experiences sexual assault because I often enjoyed them, but they definitely stripped away my ability to value true connection and intimacy. Now, as an adult, I long for the beauty and emotional bond of sex, but I find myself disconnected from it. Story 27. My dark secret might not be as intense as others here, but it's something that weighs heavily on me. At my school, you can still get a passing grade after the report card is delivered, which is crucial to my story. Last year, I completely lost my motivation for school. Almost all of my assignments went undone, starting near the end of the second quarter and lasting until the end of the school year. When my second quarter report card came, I failed several classes. I told my parents and friends that I'd lost motivation and promised to make up all my missing assignments. That was a lie. I only did enough to barely pass. At the start of the third quarter, I told everyone I'd regained my motivation, but that was another lie. I was still stuck in that unmotivated state. By the end of the third quarter, I'd failed even more classes. Again, I promised to catch up on everything, but I only did the minimum to scrape by. The fourth quarter was the same story, except I finally managed to do enough to pass all my classes. Now I'm on probation, which might be for the best. School starts tomorrow, and I'm terrified that I'm still in this unmotivated state. I want to do better this year, but I'm afraid I won't be able to. Wish me luck. Story 28. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my dad left me home alone while he mowed the lawn with our tractor. At some point, the tractor ran out of gas, so I pulled it into the driveway to refill it. We only had those big 5-gallon gas cans, and for a kid my age, they were pretty heavy. Still, I managed to fill the tank without a problem, until the very end. While removing the nozzle, I accidentally spilled gasoline all over the driveway right next to the house. I remembered hearing somewhere that cars could explode if they were running while being filled with gas, and for some reason, my young brain decided that a puddle of gasoline next to the house was equally dangerous. Technically, I wasn't wrong. A large puddle of gas is a bad idea. But my solution? I decided to light it on fire to burn it off. At first, everything seemed fine. The gas ignited and started burning away. But I hadn't moved the gas can out of the way before lighting it. The flame shot up to the nozzle, and suddenly, the can itself was on fire. Panicking, I ran over to try and choke it out by putting my finger over the hole, but in my rush, I knocked the can over. Gas spilled onto the side of the house, which quickly went up in flames. I managed to put the cap back on the gas can to extinguish it, then ripped off my shirt and started patting down the flames on the house siding. The damage was bad. The siding was charred black. Terrified, I grabbed a bucket and soap and started scrubbing the blackened siding as best I could. Luckily, my dad had gone overboard when painting the house and used more than enough layers of paint. Most of the burn marks came off after a lot of scrubbing, though the undersides of the slats were still scorched. A couple of nights later, I snuck out late at night, found some leftover paint in the basement, and carefully touched up the undersides of the slats. To this day, I don't think my dad ever noticed, but that was the day I almost burned our house down. Story 29. I started hooking up with my boss at work. We had an 8-year age gap. I'm 21F, he's 29M, so he asked if we could keep things low-key. I didn't mind, as he was up for a promotion that would relocate him, and we both understood it would be short-lived. However, just before he left, I found out the real reason he wanted to keep things secret. He had a long-term girlfriend he lived with, who was recovering from cancer. I was absolutely shocked. I immediately went cold toward him, and he blocked me on all social media, so I couldn't find any information about her or how I missed her existence. The day after he left for his new position, he went on holiday and proposed to his girlfriend. Someone in our work group chat shared a screenshot of their Facebook engagement announcement showing her name and face. Part of me wants to reach out and tell her the truth, that her new fiancé is a cheating scumbag. But I haven't. They've been together for years, and from the post, it's clear she had been waiting for this proposal for a long time. After everything she's been through battling cancer, I feel like I should let her have her happily ever after. Instead, I just pray that he doesn't pull the same antics with her that he did with me. Story 30. I've never been able to tell my best friend the real reason I broke up with my ex. At the time, I told her that my partner wanted to open up our closed relationship, which wasn't true. For some reason, I held on to that lie instead of telling the truth. The real reason? While watching The Office with my ex, I saw the relationship between Jim and Pam develop, and it hit me. I've been in love with my best friend for the past 10 years, and I can't let anything stop me from trying to be with her. That realization inspired me to break up with my ex, despite the fact that she didn't deserve it. She was a great girlfriend, kind, caring, and someone I genuinely loved. When I ended things, she said she'd felt it coming, which caught me off guard because I hadn't even seen it coming myself. I was happy with her and had high hopes for our relationship, but I knew deep down that she deserved someone who wasn't in love with someone else. As for my best friend, we were briefly romantic back in high school, but since then, my feelings have been unrequited. I'm just happy to be part of her life and value our friendship deeply. I know we'd be great together, but I can't force her feelings. Still, I've never felt this kind of confidence about love with anyone else. If the opportunity ever arose, I would marry her on the spot. But for now, I treasure our friendship, even if it's not what I secretly hope for. Story 31. When my dad was young, he was abused by his father. Unfortunately, when he had me, he repeated that cycle of abuse because I reminded him of himself. My mom was around, but sometimes she allowed it to happen, or my dad would wait until she wasn't home. I moved out at 19 with my first boyfriend, and now I'm 23. The physical abuse has stopped, but my dad still gets to me mentally. We act like nothing ever happened, but I know he's angry that I'm far away, living with the man who took me from the house. Now I'm pregnant, and I've made the decision that I'll never hit my son. But I'm scared, terrified really, that I might get so angry one day that I could hurt him, just like my dad hurt me. My boyfriend reassures me that it won't happen. He points out how I can barely handle putting our dog in timeout without crying when he gives me sad eyes. Still, the fear lingers. I want to break the cycle, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I want my son to feel safe and loved in his own home, to have an amazing childhood where his feelings are heard and validated. I don't know if this counts as a dark secret, but my childhood haunts me, especially when random flashbacks hit me out of nowhere. I just want to do better for my child. Story 32. I'm planning to propose to my partner so I can end my life without regrets. The way some girls dream of their weddings from a young age, I've always planned my perfect proposal. But I've also been struggling with mental illness for over a decade. I've had 2 attempts as a teenager and started therapy 2 years ago. For the first year on antidepressants, I felt better, but over the past 6 months, my old thoughts and behaviors have returned. During this time, I decided to propose to my partner. We've been together for over a year, and I love him more than anyone I've ever loved before. He knows I'm planning to propose, but what he doesn't know is that the regret of never having that moment with him is the only thing that stopped me from jumping off the balcony during my darkest moments. I know this plan is selfish. Some might say that if I truly loved him, I'd leave his life quietly, so he wouldn't have to endure the pain of losing a partner. I've thought about it. After the proposal, I've considered telling him I cheated or doing something else to make him hate me so he won't miss me as much. But I don't know how much longer I can hold on. In less than a week, I'll propose, and after that, I don't know what will happen. I can't say which I'm looking forward to more, putting the ring on his finger or finally feeling free of the one thing that's been stopping me. Story 33. This summer, I got drunk for the first time at a friend's house, along with another one of her friends, M. It was just the 3 of us. I'd had weed before, but the combination of alcohol and weed was new to me. I was also avoiding eating as much as possible because I struggle with binge eating and wanted to cut down. Things escalated between me and the guy that night. We ended up having sex while drunk and high. It was my first time. The next morning, I was still tipsy and lightheaded. I hadn't eaten in about 10-15 hours, which probably didn't help. I usually wake up early due to my genetics and sleep schedule, so I was awake before him. And then I did something I swore I'd never do. I touched him while he was asleep. He moved my hand away, and I immediately stopped. When he woke up later, he initiated sex again, so at the time, I didn't think much of it. But the guilt hit me like a truck once I remembered what I'd done. It took me 2 days to fully recall the incident, and when I did, I was horrified. I apologized to both him and my friend, but they've understandably cut me off. It's been almost 3 months, and I still feel disgusted with myself. I've started relapsing into unhealthy habits and feel like I've ruined my future before it's even begun. I don't know why I did it, and it's eating away at me. My mental state has spiraled. I feel like I don't deserve food. I've started experiencing mild hallucinations, and I wake up every morning wishing I hadn't. I know what I did was wrong, and I wish I could take it all back. I just don't know how to move forward. Story 34. I've been in a relationship for 3 years now. The first year was rough, but it's since grown into a loving and caring relationship. The sex is frequent and enjoyable. Before this relationship, I had a very different lifestyle. I slept around a lot. I enjoyed the freedom to explore new bodies and experiences, and it became a significant part of my identity, and even a kink for me. Now that I'm in a committed relationship, I feel like I've given up something important. I love my girlfriend. She's worked hard on herself and her flaws to make our relationship work, which she openly admits were responsible for much of the early drama. I feel guilty for feeling this way because she truly is amazing. I've tried to address this by encouraging her to explore sexually with other people so she doesn't feel like she's missing out the way I do. To my knowledge, she's fooled around lightly with 2 people, and I was happy for her, but she's told me it felt like cheating and that she's not used to that dynamic. We've talked about visiting a swingers club and even the possibility of threesomes, which she's open to exploring. But it's not the same as an open relationship, and she's not sure if she could handle it emotionally in the long run, given her self-esteem and jealousy issues. I'm not looking to replace her or find warmth or love elsewhere. She's perfect for me in every way, including sexually. I don't know why I feel this way, and it frustrates me. I've always said I'd never cheat, but sometimes I worry that if the right situation presented itself, like if I was emotional, stoned, or drunk, I might give in. That's why I avoid alcohol and weed altogether and stay home during bad periods. I don't want to hurt her, and I don't want to jeopardize our relationship. I'm just trying to figure out why I feel this way and how to deal with it. Story 35. I work in an emergency room, and every day is high-stress chaos. I see people on the worst days of their lives, trauma injuries, heart attacks, seizures, and more. We have to deliver devastating news to families, telling them their loved ones didn't make it or that their lives will never be the same. We try our best to save everyone, but sometimes, despite doing everything right, someone dies on the table. It's easy to get desensitized to it all. When I have to tell a crying family that their loved one didn't make it, part of me is calculating how long the conversation is keeping me away from the floor and how quickly I can exit the situation. When someone comes in with a broken leg and is crying in pain, I find myself annoyed because as much as it hurts, it's not a priority over the patients who are literally dying. Of course, I can't just say, you'll be in pain for the next 6 hours because we don't have enough staff to help you right now, and it's not going to kill you. Instead, I have to mask my frustration and exhaustion with a facade of bedside manner. I love my job and I love helping people, but the endless flow of patients can feel overwhelming. There's always another gunshot wound, another seizure, another crisis. I'm tired and I go home feeling guilty. Guilty that I'm numb to it all. Guilty that my empathy sometimes feels fake. Guilty that the best advice I can give new staff is, you'll get used to it. The only thing that keeps me going is the bond I have with my coworkers. We all feel the same way, and knowing I'm not alone in this makes it bearable. Story 36. My depressive BPD spirals often feel like implosions. I stop eating or binge on junk, drink heavily alone at all hours, smoke weed nonstop, and escape into anything I can find. These spirals have convinced most of the people I went to high school with that I probably killed myself by now. The worst part? I'm comfortable living this way. I attempted suicide twice when I was younger because I couldn't handle the pain, and now I feel like I'm just waiting out my days, or waiting to find an easier way to do it. It feels inevitable. My life feels as insignificant as my mother's. She couldn't help herself, became addicted to alcohol and sleeping pills, and spent her life talking about suicide and regrets. She died in 2020 at 52 from an unaddressed heart problem and a blood clot. Nothing ever got better for her, and she was one of the most devastated and depressed people I've ever known. Watching her spiral was heartbreaking. Now I devastate the people close to me in the same way. I'm in therapy, and I'm more self-aware now. DBT has helped me stop my mood swings, and I'm finally learning to feel empathy and take accountability. My partner is incredibly understanding while also holding me accountable, which has made a big difference. Still, it feels like I'm grieving my mother all over again, grieving the toxic, uninformed, and ill-equipped version of myself I'm trying to let go of. I want more for myself than just existing like this. I'm trying to direct some of the empathy I've learned inward, and while it's hard, I'm not ready to give up yet. Story 37. I had a close friend who I lost touch with for a while, but he reconnected by sending me a letter from jail. At first, he didn't tell me why he was there, and I promised we'd stay friends. I thought I knew him well enough to believe he wasn't a bad person, and even if it was something serious, I believed I could handle it. When he finally told me the truth, I was devastated. He'd been arrested for possession of child pornography and attempting to meet up with a minor. In his last letter, he detailed how he was caught in a sting operation. I felt sick reading his words, angry, disgusted, and heartbroken. He even tried to justify his actions, claiming he wouldn't have actually harmed the child. I almost vomited. I wrote several letters to him, expressing my emotions and the betrayal I felt, but I never sent them. I couldn't bring myself to respond. Eventually, I learned he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. I feel sick even writing this. I don't think I'll ever fully process or get over it. You think you know someone, and then something like this happens. Story 38. I have full-length conversations with myself, and I know it sounds strange. Most people might immediately think schizophrenia, but I don't fit the criteria for that diagnosis. I've been doing this since I was about 8 years old. It calms me down to engage in these self-dialogues. Whenever I feel like an outsider or I'm grappling with something, I turn inward because deep down, I know I'm the only person who can give myself the answers I'm seeking. I often go for long walks in the evening, and after a while, I'll start talking to myself. It usually begins with a question like, "What do you think about?" I'll then respond as if I'm someone else. offering a counterpoint to my own thoughts. For example, if I say, "Dave's such a jerk," my out loud response might be, "Well, you did kind of provoke him." I'm fully aware that I'm talking to myself as if I'm another person, but it's a way to see things from different perspectives. It's also been incredibly helpful for anger management since I have a bad temper, though thankfully a long fuse. I'm not sharing this because I think something is wrong with me. I know it's unusual, but it's a useful tool for processing emotions and gaining insight. I just wonder if anyone else does this too. Story 39. I hold a grudge against a stranger because she was closer to my grandfather than I ever was. My grandfather passed away in February at the age of 93. For the past 10 years, he had lived in a wonderful retirement home after my grandmother's death. The facility was excellent, and he built close friendships with other residents and the staff. In December, he suffered a severe spinal injury during a storm, which ultimately led to his passing 2 months later. My family initially believed he would recover because he'd always been resilient. He'd survived multiple strokes and injuries throughout his life. Because of this, I didn't make an effort to call him more frequently after the injury. I always imagined we'd have a stronger bond when I got older. We both loved history, political discussions, and other intellectual topics, but I never had the chance to connect with him on those levels. Living in different states, family dynamics, and COVID restrictions made visits rare. By the time I called him, he didn't even recognize me. At his funeral, a young woman spoke about her close bond with him. She was the daughter of a janitor at the facility and had helped out a lot during quarantine. She shared story after story about their time together, how much he meant to her and how his death impacted her. I sat there seething with jealousy and guilt. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had taken my place. I'd already felt like a failure as a granddaughter for not being closer to him, and her speech only amplified those feelings. I didn't speak at his funeral because I had no stories to share, nothing to say. She did. I know my anger is irrational, but it's something I've struggled with since his passing. I feel like I failed at one of the most important relationships in my life because I kept putting it off until the time was right. Now that time will never come. I've tried to cope through therapy and even wrote an essay about it for school, which received positive feedback. Still, I can't help but feel like I let my grandfather down. I just hope that wherever he is, he's proud of me. He shaped so much of who I am, even if I didn't realize it while he was alive. Story 40. I hate my mom's friend. Before my mom met her, she was a regular, loving mother who never swore at us. But after they became friends, everything changed. My mom started swearing, beating us, and cursing us. Behaviors she clearly picked up from her friend, who regularly treated her own kids the same way. I was often forced into situations where I had to play with her kids, and I absolutely hated them, especially her daughter. I would watch my mom's friend beat and berate her kids, and it made me so angry. She even had another friend who hung around us, and one day this woman slapped me across the face because she thought I was being too loud. I was just excited to be somewhere, and that slap stayed with me. This toxic environment completely ruined my relationship with my mother. I felt like she resented me, and I grew rebellious and resentful in return. I couldn't see her as a safe space, which is heartbreaking because I'm her only daughter. I remember one time I went to school with bruises, and my teacher called my mom in for a meeting. My mom showed up with her friend, and only later did I realize that this friend had coached her on what to say to the teacher. As a child, I didn't understand that the abuse was wrong. I thought I deserved it because I was hyperactive. But now that I'm older, I see how much it's affected me. I've tried to repair my relationship with my mom, and while we're in a better place now, it still hurts to think about what I needed from her back then. I turned to the wrong people for comfort, which led to bad friends, bad boyfriends, and bad decisions. I've told my mom how much I hate her friend, but she doesn't know how unsafe I felt as a child. That fear and lack of security destroyed my self-confidence. I overthink everything, and I'm terrified of failure. I've struggled to form and maintain friendships. I often cut people off before they can hurt me. Now that I have a son, I can't imagine treating any child the way I was treated. When I think about it, I break down sobbing. I'm determined to give my child the safety, love, and support I never had.